Welcome to my forecast for the year 2016 coming up. So when you're interested in astrology, we always deal with the power of the seeding moment, of the beginning of something new. And when we make the chart for that, we can pretty much forecast what the qualities are which want to unfold. And then we can be very conscious in which direction we point our energy to flow and how we can possibly manifest the highest potentials of those underlying frequencies and planetary forces. First of all, I want to thank you for being part of my astrological tribe, for listening to my forecasts throughout the year, and especially for those of you who choose to communicate with me. I really, really love to have that feeling to be part of that bigger field of interest and passion for astrology. So thank you for being with me throughout the year. And if this is your first video, then make sure you sign up for your subscription. And if you go to my website, maoiastrologyreading.com, you can sign up for my free newsletter. And there you will get access to your free birth chart and your free love stone report. So that's something I would everybody like to have. So make sure you take advantage of that. So this is a time of the year when we seem to be especially interested in contemplating the old and planning the new. So of course, every journey starts with where you are. And this is a wonderful time of the year between the years after Christmas, when that is over, to really think about what you have achieved the last year, and how you feel with where you are. Are you happy? Are you content? And what are the plans for next year? So it's a time to really see what has worked for you and to make course directions. So setting new goals and intentions for the coming year. And then, of course, you have to commit to take action steps. So for that, it's always good to have a buddy, somebody you share the process with for whatever project you're embarking on, or to set yourself up in your calendar and really make deadlines for when you want to be done with which steps towards your goal. So planning is just the first step, and then you have to set a structure into place which helps you to commit and take the necessary action steps. In astrology, we have many different forecast techniques and ways to determine the general planetary influences and activations we are facing. But I want to remind you that this is a system of archetypes, of symbols, of the general underlying creative forces of the universe. So astrology is not a system of already events or specific forms set in stone. So, and this is actually where astrology really strives and is a wonderful tool to use, because it gives us a general idea of what we're facing. And there's a whole variety of lower end possibilities and higher end possibilities, how those potentials can turn out into the world of the manifestations of the form. But as I always look at, it's really the state of consciousness which will enable you to make those higher end manifestations. So this is the reason why forecast readings are actually extremely helpful for you to become conscious of what you're facing and open your awareness to those high end navigations of those currents. If you agree with me that the future is not set in stone, And predictions and fortune telling only works to some extent, and it seems to work especially if people are very rigid and repetitive in their structure. Then of course, if you see how somebody has behaved and made decisions in the past, it's kind of easy to predict this is what's going to happen in the future. But I think we can agree that the individual state of consciousness is really the point in your nature, in your being, your personality, how you create your life out there, how you experience life, and then reflect back and attract circumstances or people into your life as a result of that inner world. So in astrology, everything goes back to the basic documents, your birth chart. And this is showing us your personal filter, how you filter the world around you, those planetary waves through your individual personality. And that's why I really want you to have that birth chart so you can learn how to listen to general forecasts and how to apply it and filter it through your own birth chart. So I want to give you an example with Pluto Uranus square we have been facing. Like the 7 exact Pluto Uranus squares we had between 2012 and 2015. Here you can see all the specific dates. These were the underlying forces, we could say, responsible for all those upheavals, starting with stock market crashes and changes of power and all the problems with the terrorists and all that we could really gather together under the understanding of here is the Lord of the Hell realms, Lord Pluto in the heavens, squaring off with the Lord of lightning and thunderbolts and revolution. So of course we can easily assume that these are years where there's a lot of thunder and lightning going on. And when you look at the dates, you can actually correlate them with quite some intense times we had with events on the Earth. So the last Pluto square was exact in March 2015. So with the exact squares we kind of done. But after that, on December 25th, 2015, Uranus will be stationary, direct at 16 degrees 33 minutes in Aries, and still squaring with Pluto at 14 degrees 51 minutes in Capricorn. So even if it's not an exact square anymore, just the fact that Uranus is stationary, that is considered a very strong impact, changing directions, and it's well inside the orb. So that might be a time where we have something happening here. It's also the full moon is on December 25th, and that will be squaring the next day with Uranus. So we can expect some emotional upheaval and expressions of that in the collective field. Then the good news is that these squares will fade in intensity throughout 2016 and 2017. And just some general thoughts about the Uranus-Pluto square. A lot got started. A lot of the old structures were broken up, don't work anymore. A lot of sobering is going on the planet. So how I look at it now, we are called to really integrate what we have learned as an individuality, as a person. And especially if those squares have been playing out and touching us in our birth chart, then we were really called as an individual person for those bigger for this bigger momentum of transformation to be integrated through us in our personal life. So in general, I think that's part of what's going to happen in this integration phase when the squares fade in intensity. So that's going to be one of the general backdrops we're looking at. So these Pluto Square transits were very feared in the astrological community, and rightful so. But I also want to point out that there is always a potential and a higher ground, no matter how severe or threatening or scary some celestial connections might be there. So for example, let's stay with the Pluto Uranus. The breaking points with Pluto can be looked at and experienced when we have integrated the principle and we're willing to let go of attachments and old ways of doing things. Then actually these plutonic processes can bring us through a breakthrough point, which is really the field of Uranus, this breakthrough and a whole new level of consciousness. So looking at it from the other way, the crisis Uranus relieves the chronic stress we experience from the plutonic angle. So also when we work with Pluto transits in the personal chart, or even in the birth chart or activated through transits, we're facing our own woundedness. That's what Pluto is about. And when we're willing to do that, when we go down to those hell realms, then it leads us to that perspective of personal liberation. Something breaks free through a new perspective. So via synchronicity, that successful inner work, integrating shadow aspects, that's Pluto work, it then can trigger magic. So walls turn into doorways. That's Uranus again. So looked at it from the other perspective again, those sudden changes we might have been experiences often reveal underlying issues. Sudden changes, Uranus, underlying issues are in the realm of Lord Pluto. And bold moves, Uranus, can lead to empowerment and insight. So this is really something I want to point at, that as hard and challenging those Pluto-Uranus transits have been, they hold an enormous potential for empowerment, for breakthrough, for coming to a whole different level of consciousness as a global community. I also want to throw in some other thoughts which are more concerned with the bigger cycles we're looking at. So you are probably familiar with the thought that the year 2012 is supposed to be some kind of a turning point. So the Mayan calendar ended 2012. We are talking that we have started into the Aquarian age. We're talking about alignment with the galactic center, which according to some Vedic astrologers, that the point of the sun's orbit furthest from the galactic center, furthest away from the center of consciousness in our galaxy, occurred around 500 AD. So all these different lenses look at the potential of living really in very exciting times, with the high potential to develop in what the Vedics call the golden ages. But all those systems also agree that it's not like just a couple of years or 10 years, it might be centuries, which it will take to really move into those different states of consciousness. But I do believe we all can agree on that we are kind of in those center years of where that transition is happening. There are many different techniques to look at forecasts and look at the coming year. So in astrology, we're always concerned with the quality of time. with the quality of the beginning of something. And then, of course, we make a chart for that. So here I made a chart for you for the coming year, starting January 1st at midnight. And it will give you an idea of under which forces we start into the new year and what's impacting us. And if you have your birth chart, you can really project this chart around your birth chart and see what gets activated for you. And that will give you kind of an idea what wants to happen and what wants to be integrated for you personally in the coming year. As you can see in the beginning of the year, the sun is just 5 degrees away from Lord Pluto. So we're having kind of a little rough start here, but because we have been so involved with all the Plutonic and Uranian energies, I think it's really about that those forces are in our face in a very specific, strong way. But we have more ability now to use it in an integrative way. So it is in the 4th house, so there is a connection for all of us to be very emotional about it. And I do believe we are all part of something bigger, call it the unified field of consciousness, oneness, the divine, morphogenetic field, however you want to call it, but we are all connected. So whatever is going on, the terrorist attack in Paris, we all are feeling that. We all are emotionally connected. And therefore, we all need to do the healing work and the integration work. The rising is Libra, the moon is in Libra, so I believe the intent for the coming year is really about balance, is really about love, is about beauty. And I strongly believe that our strongest point of power is who we are and where we are in our own personal development. So how we are interacting with people around us, how loving and peacefully we are able to create our own life that will have an impact onto the bigger picture. And I believe this is really the power we truly have. So that's what I see happening here with the moon in Libra and the ascendant Libra, and Mars is in Libra in the 1st house. So it's not just laying down and letting other people run over you, but it's really to make a point. It's really to take action. It's really to become passionate about peaceful solutions, which we so urgently need on this planet. So the South Node is in Pisces in the 6th house, the Virgo house, and the North Node is in Virgo in the Piscean house in conjunction with Jupiter and in a wide conjunction to that moon. So I believe the karmic lesson for the coming year has a lot to do with our spiritual connection, to truly feel we are something bigger than just our own individual spark, and not to get caught up with belief systems in that, with that idea of there's only one way, there's only one God, one way to come to a solution. So with everything going on in the world, people killing each other still for having different beliefs, I think this is really going to be up for us to look at and to gain a wider wisdom perspective onto there is more to life than what we are able to perceive from our individual point of view. Another thing I'm interested in looking forward into the coming year is to look at the highlights. So when we look at the general climate of the coming year, I look at the solar eclipses, the lunar eclipses, the planets who are retrograding or turning direct, especially Mercury retrogrades, are always interesting to keep an eye on because Mercury tends to throw a wrench into our gears. So, of course, especially powerful lineups with transpersonal planets like Pluto Uranus square was so much in the center for years. So that would guide us to what we call the hot degrees. So hot degrees I would call any hard aspects of conjunctions, square, oppositions, especially between Mars, Jupiter, Saturn with the transpersonal planets Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, or the moon nodes. So these are areas of special interest. And in the coming year, we see especially a lot of action in the cardinal and mutable signs. So if you have planets in those, that's going to be interesting. To just give you a little overview what's going to come, but you don't have to remember all this because I'm going to talk about things as we move through the year in my forecast. But just to give you a heads up, so the hot actions, the major astrological events are the Jupiter square Saturn, which is March 23rd and May 26th. Which has actually started August 3rd, 2015. So that's one to keep an eye on. Then the Saturn square Neptune on June 17th and September 10th, continuing the series that started on November 26th. And then after moving from Virgo to Libra in September, Jupiter squares Pluto on November 24th. And opposes Uranus on December 26th. So Mars activates Saturn, Neptune in August, and Jupiter, Pluto, and Uranus in October. So please don't get overwhelmed here. I don't have the time now to discuss all that in depth, but I just wanted to put it out for you that this is something to keep an eye on, and we will discuss it along the way throughout the year. I want to take a brief look at lunar eclipses and solar eclipses and why I consider them pretty important in a forecast for the year. So eclipses in general can be compared to what's happening when we're rebooting our computer. So we're getting new updates, things shuffle into place somehow. So we could look at the solar eclipse as rebooting your conscious mind. And we can look at the lunar eclipses as rebooting our inner world, our emotions, our unconscious drives and motivations. So I believe this is why they are so powerful. And especially if they tie in with planets in your chart, then it becomes extra potent for you. I just want to point out that a solar eclipse is always a new moon. So it's a especially poignant new start. And it's happening when the moon is briefly between the sun and the earth. And that can only happen because from our perspective, sun and moon have the same size, seemingly, even if, of course, that's not the true reality. The first out of the 4 eclipses, 2 solar eclipses, 2 lunar eclipses coming up will be a total solar eclipse, March 8th or 9th, depending on where you are on the planet. So it occurs 18 degrees and 56 minutes in Pisces. So it will be affecting people born with personal planets or ascendant or other points at approximately 14 to 24 degrees. In the mutable signs, Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, Pisces. So this will be the most significantly impacted inner aspects. The second solar eclipse coming year will be September 1st, and it's happening at 9 degrees and 21 minutes of Virgo, affecting people born with personal planets or points, approximately 4 to 14 degrees of the mutable signs, Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, Pisces. So if you have any planets or your ascendant there, you will be impacted. Let's move on to the lunar eclipses. A lunar eclipse is always a full moon. And the lunar eclipse is happening when the Earth is briefly between the Sun and the Moon and casts a shadow onto the Moon. And if it's a total lunar eclipse, then we have that, what we call a blood moon. That's a shadow creates this reddish cast onto the Moon. So it's quite a phenomenon to look at. The first lunar eclipse will be happening March 23rd and occurs at 3 degrees 70 minutes in Libra. So it's opposite the Sun in Aries, of course. And it's affecting people born with personal planets and points at approximately 0 to 8 degrees of the cardinal signs, Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn. The second lunar eclipse is going to be September 16th and occurs at 24 degrees and 20 minutes of Pisces, opposite the Sun in Virgo, affecting people born with personal planets and points at approximately 19 to 29 degrees of the mutable signs, Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, and Pisces. And here are the dates for Mercury Retrograde. So January 5th, starting, ending January 25th, starts in Aquarius, ends in Earthly Capricorn. The next one will be happening in Taurus, April 28th till May 22nd. The third one, August 30th till September 22nd in the Earth sign Virgo. And the last one in December 19th till January 8th, 2017 in Earthly Capricorn to late degree fire Sagittarius. So I gave you all these dates, not because I expect you to keep them in mind and remember them, but just to give you an idea about how to follow along the certain activations throughout the year. And if you sign up for your subscriptions, or even better for the newsletter, I saw that YouTube often sends out the subscription emails a week or 10 days later after I actually have done the video. So with the newsletter, you are in the loop in a better way. So throughout the year, I will work my way through all those activations and see what that concretely can mean and how you can take those forces to the highest possibilities your consciousness allows you to. And then we can use power of focus and set very powerful anchors for those high-end intentions. So we can use images or collages as visual reminders for us to hold focus. We can work with incantations and affirmations. We can work with gemstones as anchors, and you might know that I'm an expert with the healing aspects of gemstones and how they can be used to support areas in your chart, because they are holding very perfectly organized structure, signature under those planetary forces. So they can help balance us in our intentions and where we experience friction. And music can do the same thing. We can use music to help us to sink down and meditate and connect to an expanded state of consciousness. Or we can use even smells to the olfactory sense to open us up to memories or anchor ourselves to move forward into a specific way. And of course, gratefulness, very, very powerful. So instead of looking what went wrong and what you haven't achieved in the last year, when you contemplate, I would invite you to look at what has happened in your life and what beautiful experiences you had, and the love and the connection and the successes you had in the last year, because then it truly will set the tone to move forward into those higher expressions of consciousness. And I believe this is all what it is about. So if you want to sign up for my newsletters, you will get the free horoscope and your free love stone report based on your personal chart. So you need to go to my website, Maui Astrology Reading, and sign up there. I also want you to know that I offer online astrology classes for beginners, and it doesn't really matter where you are on the planet. You can connect with me and partake in those teachings, which will enable you to get to know yourself better and start to really look at the world and what's happening to you from a more higher soul perspective, and to get to know yourself better through the lenses of astrology or your loved ones around you is a major step in self-consciousness and growing. A little bit about me. I'm very passionate about astrology. I have been using astrology as my personal spiritual journey for almost 40 years now. And I provide readings online through Skype or here on Maui where I live in person. So if you want to connect about a personal reading, you can call me 808-878-8182 or head over to my website, Maui Astrology Reading, and connect through that with an email. So if you have any questions, please connect with me. Leave me your like or comment under the video, and I would really love that. And I promise I will get back to you. So having said all that, I truly wish you a wonderful, wonderful coming year. And I hope this certain astrological perspective I'm offering has empowered you to use astrology as a consciousness tool to make the best out of it. And if you have any further questions, just connect, and I'm happy to hear from you. As we say here on Maui, aloha.
Bu akşam seminerimizi canlı olarak mobil uygulamamız üzerinden yapıyoruz.